Welcome to another edition of the Trahern Crews Show. We got a very special edition today. Um, Want to send my condolences out to the family of Ricky Cobb, who today experienced injustice when they found out that the case against the state trooper who murdered their brother, their son, their cousin, their uncle, will not be facing charges. Mr. English, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'll take a little time to chime in on that, man. Thanks for having me, by the way. You know how we get down. When it comes down to crimes against humanity, again, that was another crime against humanity suffered by an American descendant of chattel slavery, foundational Black American. Justice was not served today. I think we all need to step back and understand that this system, this suprematic system that isn't built for us, needs to be dismantled and be replaced with reparatory of justice. And we need reparatory of justice as soon as possible. Things like this don't happen when folks need and get the legislation passed that they are looking for. They did nothing with that George Floyd Act. Nothing on a state level, on a federal level. This is embarrassing for the for the state of Minnesota. There are huge questions on why you would drop charges immediately, a year after placing charges on that officer.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So shout outs to shout outs to you, my brother, for bringing attention to this, making sure that folks stand on business with this issue. My definite condolences to that family specifically, because again, they don't deserve this injustice. And this is all more of the reason why reparations is needed for American descendants of chattel slavery.
Indeed. And it's just a lot of I just think it's an election year, and it's there's a lot of political activity happening that I think that also was a part of this decision making. So, and not even just that, I just think people are going to protect white supremacy and institutional racism is showing itself to us in real time. And sometimes that's comes from places where some people wouldn't expect, but not the grassroots. And speaking of reparative, we've been talking about what reparations is, what reparations isn't, and even get out in front of it ism. And we'll explain what get out in front of it ism is in a little bit. But I seen this on this one sister's page. Big shout out to our sister who brought attention to this. I don't want to call her, she might not want me to say her name, but a lot of people didn't really aren't liking some of the things that are being said or being presented to us as reparations or things for Rondo, especially those of us who actually know what reparations is, and people who are from Rondo. So
Did you want to go into what this without revealing any of the sisters personal information? Did you want to kind of read what the sister had commented about?
No, that's more of a different issue. I'm rather stay on what reparations is and what reparations isn't, because that's a totally different conversation, and that's more of a localized conversation too.
Well,
I
then,
think that
yeah. When you bring it up, let me know. We can circle back to it if we need to. But yeah, we can stand on bit. Let's go and do it. Let's go and break this down, baby.
okay. So we were looking at this, and so this came up on her page, and then me and you was building on it. So you could tell me your thoughts about what what this is.
Well, breaking down, I would have to say this circle. Um, I'm taking a look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, and they are calling this Rondo's reparative framework. Um, Me and you just spoke about what reparatory justice is and how that entails within the repair framework for reparations. So I can already see right now there's some and again, I have no idea who wrote this column. I have no idea who's attached to it. I'm looking at the column itself. And when we're talking about reparations, I can already tell there's some something fishy about uh, uh, the term reparative framework. Now, when I take a look at reparations, and again, between me and you, Trey, we both always start with the bridge when it comes down to the international law of reparations. And I know, I'm pretty sure you can elaborate a little bit on that a little more, but the international laws of reparations, they do have a reparatory framework. And when you start to use these kind of terms like reparatory framework, then you're starting to bridge in what I consider reparations language. And that's where kind of where the ball drops for you, because reparations is for American descendants of chattel slavery. And there is a framework for that is already built into the framework of what the international law is with that. And we can break some of this down. But I want you to go right back for me, if you could, just real fast. I want you to go back to that circle.
Back. Give me 1 second. Pull it
Take
up
your
real
time,
quick.
brother.
So yeah,
Take
and this, and just because it might not be reparations, but that doesn't mean it's not a good program and that you shouldn't do it. But we're just saying, don't say it's reparations. Don't try to jump out in front of some energy that was built by the grassroots and then just throw something that will not just me and you, but the grassroots nationally and just reparationist period don't consider reparations. There go the graph right there.
I'm glad you brought that back up, my brother. Because and the main reason why I'm glad you brought it back up is because let's break this down real fast, and then we can take a look at the 5 points of what the United Nations reparations laws are. But I want to kind of say this language real fast out loud, because I want folks to kind of get a clear view of it. So go right back to that circle. Okay, so when you talk about, for example, historic Rondo, St. Paul, what are we talking about here when we say historic? There's all types of conversation for historic Rondo, but when you just leave historic Rondo as a reparatory framework, that sounds like a blank term to me. When you go to Black arts and cultural destination and narrative. Again, these sound like just blank terms to me.
Well,
Um,
actually, at the there's a down here or up here it says it sees culture as a source of healing. Economic violence doesn't just have financial impacts, it also tears the social and cultural fabrics of communities. Reparative efforts that exclusively tend to the revitalization of wealth do not provide the depth of healing our communities are hungry for. Culture carries ancestral ways of relating to one another, offers solutions, and heals unseen wounds.
okay, so let's do this real quick. I'm glad you brought that up real fast because I want to say something real fast, real quick, just as just as a rebuttal to that column's comment. So what I would do is I would say, in terms of reparations, when you look at it from that standpoint, that is basically kind of going into what we talk about as far as compensation. Compensation is the injury state, institution, or individual is obligated to compensate for the damage. If the damage is not made good by restitution, compensation is required for any financial accessible damage suffered to the extent appropriate of appropriations to the gravity of the violations and circumstances. So when you say that when you say that compensation isn't included in healing, then that is not a reparatory framework from a reparations perspective. Because from a reparations perspective, you are including compensation along with the healing process because compensation is part of repair. And I just wanted to rebuttal that real fast.
Right. And that's what it says restitution. If you can't pay restitution and you can't restore us back to our original state, then you got to pay compensation. Right. So I think that's the difference. And also, I mean, we're out in the Rondo community. We've been out in the Rondo community and we're talking to people. So we know what they want and what they kind of expect, um, what they think reparations is. And this graph to me just ain't is not what people are talking about. The one is shared ownership is another one they have on there, and so that would again satisfaction and then rehabilitation. All
When you're talking about sharing ownership, are they talking about, for example, that shared ownership when it comes down to those crimes against humanity? Because in terms of reparations and ownership goes to the American descendants of chattel slavery.
well, they're talking about like cooperatives, land trusts, you know, those type of things like that.
Again, you talk about, okay, so for example, and I'm glad you brought that up because that kind of goes in the line of cessation, and when we're saying under international law, a state is responsible for wrongfully injuring a people is under an obligation to a cease the act of if it's continuing and b offer appropriate assurances and guarantees of non-repetition. I'm not hearing I'm this is and again, I'm glad we have to have these conversations, Trey, because what I'm hearing is I'm hearing some reparations terms used used inappropriately,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
I'm using the and if I'm right, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, I'm using and when we're looking at this column, I'm also hearing reparations terms in regards to um, the benefit of other groups that aren't tied to the American descendants of chattel slavery community.
Right.
And I think we need to really, if we're going to write stuff like this, we need to be honest that, yes, we have no issues, of course, with what you're doing and all to the success for you. But reparations, not the avenue you should be targeting with some of your language.
Right. Yeah. It causes confusion. It's not reparations. And then when people who are part of the reparations movement come across it, they know right away, oh, this isn't reparations. And it can confuse others, but then we know, and then it just causes distrust. And plus we know there's something called get out in front of it, where people try to say, well, we're already doing, where the status quo wants to say like, oh, we're already doing reparations for some reason. And you're not. And you shouldn't want to say you're already doing reparations if you're not doing reparations. If you're serious about repairing Black people, and if you're serious about what's owed to us, you're not going to say you're doing something when you're not doing it. So
When that
these
says,
models, real quick, these models and things that they're talking about, they've been doing for 30 years anyway. And you wasn't calling it reparations then, but now that there's, terms are exciting and it's George Floyd and racial justice, we'll start saying things are this and they're that when they're not. And so I say if you're doing great work in the community, but just don't say it's reparations. Everything's not reparations. This is
when you use the term economic solidarity,
right.
Economic solidarity. Let's break this down.
Call it that. That's something that they can call it.
You can call that exactly what it is, and broad base that exactly how you want to within your organizational standards, and that can be part of your value mission when it comes down to your organization and how you build. But reparations for American descendants of chattel slavery have nothing to do with economic solidarity. I mean, really, that's just a laughable term. It's a laughable term to kind of just throw in a column that has nothing to do with reparations, but uses a lot of its language.
And again, restitution means to reestablish the situation which existed before the wrongful act was committed. Changes traced to the wrongful act are reversed through restoration of freedom, recognition of humanity, identity, culture, repatriation, livelihood, citizenship, legal standing, and wealth to the extent they can be. And if they cannot, restitution is completed by compensation. And compensation, the injuring state, institution, or individuals is obligated to compensate for the damage. If damage is not made good by restitution, compensation is required for any financially accessible damage suffered to the extent appropriate and proportional to the gravity of the violation and circumstances. So we don't see these, shared solid, these things that these are not international standards of what reparations is, not what. And most of the people around the country that are working on reparations are looking at these international standards. Most of the reparations bodies that have passed around the country are working off these standards right here. So
yeah, because I didn't see the term economic labor anywhere in here. I'm
right.
looking for it hard. I'm looking for the
democracy labor. I'm thinking theirs they had something called democracy.
Yeah, democracy labor.
That's not
democratic labor. Yeah, it was democratic labor. Yeah, I'm looking for the term democratic labor in here. I'm looking, I'm looking for the term, solidarity economy.
Right. So that's not, and again, it's not reparations. It's a good program. Not saying don't do it. We're against it, but just so we don't cause confusion about what work each group is doing. and what people are working on. 4 is satisfaction. Satisfaction is part of full reparations under international law for moral damage, such as emotional injury, mental suffering, and injury to reputation. In some instances where cessation, restitution, and compensation do not bring full repair, satisfaction is also needed.
I think there was another piece in that column too. I want you to go right back to it if you could. That
And
really
then
kind of
rehabilitation shall be provided to include legal, medical, psychological, and other care and services.
yeah, I want you to go back to that column real fast so we can end this real quick.
Yeah,
Because there was one piece in there. There was one more piece in there that I want to hit. Just one more piece. I think with us breaking down the international law, with us kind of seeing some of our terms built into this, into this column.
Because it says applying a reparative framework in practice. So this says one of theirs is there is a focus on building a solidarity economy. A solidarity economy centers relational and human values in the production and exchange of goods and services. When we match economy building with place-based strategies, we set the conditions for circular economies. Again, that's great, but that's not reparations, and it's not reparative.
This has nothing
There's
to
a
do with a
commitment
place.
to democratic labor. We believe in people power and that democratic workplaces produce better results for local economies and workers. That's good. And we think workers should have rights and should even have ownership. But again, that's not reparations. That's not
Reparations has nothing to do with a place-based society. Hey, but there's another piece in there. I can't see it though. I can't see the column because there's a clear piece in there. I want you to go to.
Those were the 5, though, right there.
We'll
come back and touch it.
Okay.
A little next week or this weekend probably. We'll jump back in. Man, big shout out to you though, and your family. I want to send condolences out to you, out to the English family, out to Miss Ruby, and man, your dad was a great person. Just on behalf of Trahern Crews and BLL Minnesota, man, we want to send a shout out and be a part of sending him out the right way. Could you speak on your pops and just what he a little bit and save a little bit for this weekend because I know it's going to be big, but a little bit about his contribution here in St. Paul and just period as a foundational Black American.
Definitely, man. My pops, Edward English Sr., unfortunately, went home this past weekend, on May 25th. Lifelong sports fan, golf player, entrepreneur, scholar, winner. He comes from what he calls a village of Black folks. Brooklyn, Illinois is one of the oldest Black towns in this country. And my father grew up in that town. And he graduated from Lovejoy High School. And he got a scholarship with Bill Musselman at the University of Minnesota. So in the 70s, he migrated from Brooklyn, Illinois, to Minnesota, and let's just say he put his stamp on St. Paul. He had many different occupations here in St. Paul. He graduated from Concordia College here in St. Paul. He went to the University of Northwestern for a year. He got his bachelor's at Concordia. He was a barber here in St. Paul. He played tennis here in St. Paul. He ran a liquor store, 2 of them. He ran Olsen Brothers Liquor Store for a long time and Ebony's Liquor Store for a long time. they call him teacher. That's what they used to call him in the hood. You know what I mean? So
we're real quick because so where are we at this family and friends that's coming through this weekend? Where we at?
for the homecoming.
Yeah.
The homecoming will be at Rock of Ages Missionary Baptist Church, University Avenue East, St. Paul, Minnesota 55106. Viewing starts at 11. Funeral promptly starts at noon and it ends at 2. But I want to definitely give a shout out to BLM. Pops was always down with reparations, man. He stood on business with it. That's what he spoke about in the community. He spoke about economic justice for Black people. You know what I mean? Like I said, that's why he played all these roles in St. Paul. You know what I mean? And he taught his sons, to stay down on the business. You know what I mean? So I appreciate the platform to give him the shout out, and much love, my brother.
No doubt. Tomorrow there'll be another press conference for Ricky Cobb, the second down at Hennepin County Government Center. Juneteenth, we're down at Hennepin County Government Center. I believe that starts at 4 or 5 for a reparations justice rally. So make sure you're there. And then in August, you can go to the BLM Minnesota page and register for the Black August Reparations Conference. Again, this show is dedicated to Ed English. Rest in heaven, fly high, big brother. Man, thank you. Thank you all for tuning in to another edition of the Trahern Crews Show. Check out the Frank Knight Show tomorrow on www.blacktvs.com or Black Watch Television on your Roku channel. Have a prosperous week. Peace.
Peace.